quarterbacks are starting to fly off the board in the transfer portal, and just not a whole lot of news for Indiana. Is it time to be concerned?
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. It is the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your man, Jacob Goins. I appreciate you being here, making this your first listen or your first watch every single day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Well, thank you so much for being here. Shout out to all of my everydayers, those of you that make this your first listen or your first watch every single day. Of course, we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network. This show is free to you Monday through Friday, bonus episodes on the weekends when we're available and able and when there's big time news. So appreciate you being here and glad that you are here. Gabe Cupps for Indiana basketball has surgery. What does that mean for him? What does that mean for the guard spot for Indiana as they get ready to take on Nebraska tomorrow night? Plus, the 2025 football schedule has been released. And do I smell playoffs again for Indiana? But before we get to those, is it time to be concerned for Indiana in the transfer portal, especially at the quarterback position? Because I've started to see a lot of Indiana fans get concerned. I've started to hear a lot of worry in the voices of Hoosiers fans and the Hoosier faithful. And I totally understand. It's understandable, I guess, for a lack of a better word. I get it, right? I get why you're starting to get maybe a little worried, maybe a little scared, because there just hasn't been a whole lot of news for Indiana in a positive way in the transfer portal, right? You've lost a running back now. You had dudes who announced they were entering back in October. I mean, there just hasn't been a whole lot of good news. And we've talked a lot about quarterbacks late last week and all of this week here on Locked On Hoosiers, because that's where I feel Indiana has to go, the quarterback spot and on both offensive and defensive lines. And there just hasn't been a whole lot there. And Indiana hasn't given us a whole lot. But as I've told you, they are very locked in and focused on the college football playoff because we're just over a week away from Indiana squaring off against Notre Dame in the first ever 12-team college football playoff game. So, yes, that is their main focus right now. But it is legitimate to be concerned if you're a fan about a lot of these quarterbacks are starting to come off the board, man. Big-time names that we have talked about. Late yesterday, Conner Weigman, the Texas A&M quarterback who dealt with injuries during his time there, but was a really, really talented kid, is now leaving Texas A&M and has committed to Houston. Also a name that a lot of people brought up was Darian Mensah, the Tulane quarterback, which was surprising to see, that he was leaving, but also a little bit more surprising that he committed to Duke, which was kind of crazy. As soon as Malik Murphy decided that he was leaving Duke, Darian Mensah committed to the Blue Devils. And so those are two big names that have come off the board. Speaking of Malik Murphy, he hasn't committed anywhere yet, but he visited Auburn down in the SEC yesterday on Wednesday. And as a lot of people have said, and I'm going to jump on this boat as well, that first visit in the transfer portal is crucial. It is completely opposite of high school recruiting. Remember, in high school recruiting, right, this goes on for a year, maybe two, and these kids take several visits. They look around, they shop, right? They go up and down every aisle. They visit every store in the outlet mall before they make their decision. And it can go on for years. They want to see all of their options and make an educated decision. In the transfer portal, you don't have that much time, and you probably don't have that many options. There are certain kids that have posted graphics that have 25, 30 schools that have reached out to them. But remember, this is a 3-week window, and classes start first week of January because they still technically are student athletes. I don't think that'll last very long, but more on that at a different time. So classes start first week of January. So these kids have to get registered and get to school in less than a month. So you don't have time to shop around and hear everybody's pitch and let's compare notes and see what our best option is. No. This is a business decision. They go in, they say, what do you got? How much can you play me? And how much can you pay me? That's what it's about nowadays in the transfer portal. And so you're starting to see these big name quarterbacks take their visits and commit immediately because they don't want to mess around. They don't want to visit 5 schools and risk that if they don't commit right then and there, that they won't get taken. And while that's not the case yet with Malik Murphy, there hasn't been any news of him committing to Auburn. He did take the visit down there. And so that is concerning. You do have a quarterback that I really, really like that I've yet to talk about that just entered in the middle of the week. Fernando Mendoza, the Cal quarterback who is now leaving the Golden Bears, who just signed or just hired a new offensive coordinator. So he is now leaving, Fernando Mendoza. I like him a lot. 6'5", 225. You look at his stats and you look at his film, he's not going to blow you away. He is not going to jump off the page, and you are not going to walk away from that session saying, wow, that's the next Tom Brady. But he's a winner. And yes, I know he's at Cal. I know, which is why he didn't win more than he did. But he's just a really good game manager. He reminds me of a Curtis Rourke. He reminds me of a guy that's going to come in, have no coverage, no expectations outside of Bloomington, but he's just going to flat out get the job done. He does his checkdowns properly. He doesn't turn the ball over. He makes the right call. He can run if he has to. Not a dual threat, but he can run if he has to. Even more than just extending the play with his arm to allow him to make or extend the play with his legs to allow him to make the play with the arm. He can pick up a first down with his legs if he needs to. Keep your eye out on Fernando Mendoza. But for those of you that are concerned about Indiana in the transfer portal, I hear you. I'm telling you not to worry just yet. But I am sending a message to Indiana saying you've got to get on this. And they very well might be. Again, they're keeping this very close to the chest here. But if they're not working on this, they need to be. Because you've got to be able to fight 2 battles at the same time, all in the same war. And Indiana's trying to do that right now with the college football playoff and the transfer portal. But you're seeing more and more quarterbacks jump off the board. But remember, as we move on here, there are some names that have yet to enter the portal off of bowl teams, and out of the college football playoff. So Indiana's starter for 2025 may not even be in the transfer portal just yet. All right, coming up here on Locked On Hoosiers, I know we don't want to talk 2025 just yet, but we are because the schedule just got released. We are not wishing away 2024, but the schedule has been released for Indiana football in 2025, and it looks very manageable. Indiana could see themselves back in the college football playoff next year. We'll talk about that coming up next right here on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Game Time. This is my go-to ticketing app for anything that I need, right? Sports, music, comedy, theater, you name it, they have got it. I'm going to a concert in February. I used Game Time. I have family members that are going to a football game over Christmas. They are using Game Time. They've already used it. They got their tickets. Why? Because it's the best app in the business. They've got the best price guarantee, their lowest price guarantee, because if not, they're going to credit you 110% of the difference. And they're using Game Time Picks, which is a new feature on their app where it's going to send out all the fluff, going to get rid of it, delete it, wipe it off the face of the earth, and it's going to show you only the incredible deals that the app has to offer, the best seats at the best price. How do you know it's the best seat? You can see your view with the panoramic view from any seat at any venue. That's right, and it's accurate. I've tested it myself. I'm telling you, it is legit. You need to take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code Locked On College for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Welcome back into Locked On Hoosiers. Appreciate you being here, making this your first listen or your first watch every single day. And man, shout out to all my everydayers, because that group, you guys are growing. I mean, by the day, you are growing and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So thank you so much for being here as we are on the backstretch of 2024 and launching ourselves into 2025. Man, I can't wait for what that year has to hold and what it has in store for us here at Locked On Hoosiers. And so thank you again for all your support. If you are listening on audio, right, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, any audio platform that you are currently listening on, be sure that you are following us there. You have those notifications turned on, because I don't want you to miss an episode that we post, especially if we post any bonus or reaction episodes. Don't want you to miss those, okay? So be sure that you do that. And then for those of you on YouTube who watch and listen to us on there every single day, be sure that you are liking the videos, including this one. Use your thumb, hit it right there. Or if you're on your computer, use your little mouse, click the thumb up, right? That helps us out tremendously. Be sure that you are commenting down below as well. That apparently helps the algorithm too, get it out there for more people to find it. So comment down below. Are you starting to be worried about Indiana in the portal? Let me know your thoughts on that. And then be sure that you are subscribed to the channel if you have not already. We are just over 100. We're less than 150 subs away from 4,000. And I want to get there before the start of the new year. And I need your help to do it. So thank you so much for doing that. And your support really does mean a lot. Don't want to wish away 2024, because we got a lot of great things for Indiana to still accomplish on the football field this season. It will hopefully carry into 2025, but not for the actual 2025 season. But I do want to talk about that today, because the schedule has been released for 2025. And let me just say this before I run you through it and kind of react to everything here. Very, very manageable. And while that was a benefactor to us in 2024, right? Won a lot of our games, more games than we've ever won, got to the college football playoff. It did raise some concerns for those outside of Indiana, right? There was a lot of conversation about Indiana of, oh, their strength of schedule's terrible. They only, they lost their one big game and blah, 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 whatever. That's just not true. Indiana won 11 games this season, and 10 of those were by 14 points or more. What else do you want us to do other than, beat Ohio State? But not many people have been able to do that this year. So we'll see what Tennessee says when they go to the shoe and play Ohio State in the cold on the road. We'll see how they feel from the SEC. So while our schedule was very manageable this year, I think it's very manageable again next year. You've got a couple of tough games, right? Especially on the road, but it starts out, I'm just going to say it, starts out easy for Indiana in 2025. Starting on Saturday, August 30th, okay? Hey, no Friday night games next year. That's nice. Don't have to worry about playing some of those weaker non-conference games on a Friday night. August 30th, on that Saturday, we'll kick off the season against Old Dominion. We're going to raise the trophy, have the banner. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding. Old Dominion will come in on August 30th. That's your season opener. You then play Saturday, September 6th against Kennesaw State, and then Saturday, September 13th against Indiana State. And look, these games, you have to have them. I think they're going away at some point, and maybe not all the way, but 3 of them is just a lot, in my opinion. I would rather one of those be a big non-conference game in terms of a Power 4, right? Play somebody out of the SEC or the ACC or the Big 12. But you've heard all the people cry, why would we schedule those when the playoff's not going to respect it? Whatever. People are just salty that they didn't get in. I still think that benefits you more than playing, no offense, Kennesaw State. Like, it's the same argument I have in college basketball, right? Where I say a difficult non-con schedule will benefit you in March more than playing the weakest of the weak schedule kind of like we're doing right now for Indiana basketball, right? So I say the same thing about football because, man, we're not going to play a real game, a legitimate matchup, a quality opponent until the fourth week of the season, until Saturday, September 20th, when Illinois comes to town. Now, I'm never going to complain about 4 straight home games. That's nice to start the season. We're going to pay for it later, don't worry. But 4 straight home games to start the year. Then to wrap up September, we hit the road for the first time where we go to Iowa, which has been a tough place to play at times. And depending on the weather, depending on the situation, could be a really interesting game. Also depends on what the heck Iowa's going to be in terms of a football team. So first 5 games, Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, Indiana State, Illinois at home. Then you go to Iowa. You then get I'm not going to say a much needed bye week, but I think a perfectly placed bye week, because after that, on October 11th, on Saturday, you head out to Eugene, you make your first West Coast trip, and you play at Oregon. Gonna be a tough game, but how exciting is that going to be? I hope a lot of you get to make this trip. How really, really neat this is going to be for Indiana to go play the Ducks in Eugene. That's going to be the first Saturday in October. No, excuse me, the second Saturday in October. Your first Saturday is your bye week. Then you get to go to Eugene. So you get a whole extra week to prepare for that Oregon team. You then come home and you play Michigan State and UCLA October 18th and October 25th. And then November hits. All right, here's your October again. Bye week at Oregon, home for Michigan State, and home for UCLA. Very manageable. Very, very manageable. Bye week before Oregon, and then home games against 2 teams that are just not where they need to be as programs right now. So I like it. I think October is very doable. Here's what November has in store. Saturday, November 1st, you're at Maryland. You then back that up. On Saturday, November 8th, you go to Happy Valley. You go to Penn State on November 8th. You return home against Wisconsin. You have a bye week on November 22nd, the second to last week. And then we finish up at Purdue. Your November again, at Maryland, at Penn State, home versus Wisconsin, bye week, and at Purdue. It's tough. Absolutely. A road game at Maryland does not scare me. A home game versus Wisconsin is really cool. Does it scare me? Not necessarily. I need to see what Wisconsin's going to be before I give full comments on that. But a road game at Penn State is another huge opportunity. And so your 2 big games that you highlight, at Oregon and at Penn State, right? You played Michigan and Ohio State this year. You get Oregon and Penn State this next year. And you highlight the Oregon and Penn State games, and just off the rip, I'm saying you got to win one. You need to win one of those games. If you want to be competitive and you want to get back to the college football playoff next year, winning one of those games, at least one of those games, I think is crucial, especially because the schedule is a little bit weak, right? Compared to some of the others. That's because the Big Ten is not where it needs to be right now. And so I would say it's a tougher schedule than we played this year. Wouldn't you? Would you think? Do you think that? Do you think this is a tougher schedule than what we've been playing in 2024? Your home games are highlighted by, oh goodness, Michigan State and Wisconsin. Yeah, that's about it. I mean, Illinois coming here is cool, I guess. But Wisconsin late in the season will be good. And then you get that bye week before you go and play Purdue. So after you go through 5 straight games, 2 of those being on the road, 3 of those being on the road, you get that bye week before Purdue. Hopefully you're getting that to really prepare for possibly a Big Ten championship or the college football playoff. Overall, I think it's exciting. A little bit more difficult, but I think a lot more rewarding than what this year's schedule was. And I think it's good enough for us to get back to the college football playoff in 2025. All right, final segment coming up on Locked On Hoosiers. Going to go over to basketball, where Indiana got some bad news about one of their guards. Gabe Cupps has surgery. We'll talk about what that means for him and what it means for the team as a whole. And our final segment coming up on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $150. Wow. You can bet $5. They're not asking you to bet that much. You can bet $5 and they're going to give you $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet, okay? The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. You can do that tonight for Thursday Night Football. How about this? Rams and Niners. Yes, Rams 49ers coming up tonight. Really good game. Two teams that desperately need a win to keep playoff hopes alive if they've got them. So you can do that tonight. If you get a hunch in the middle of the game, check out the latest stats, view play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. That's FanDuel.com. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, final segment here on Locked On Hoosiers. Thank you again for being here. Shout out to all of my everydayers. Those of you who are maybe getting new into the rotation, or maybe this is your first time, thanks so much for being here and hope that you are enjoying it. We'll wrap up with some basketball conversation. We got some news from Indiana on Wednesday where Gabe Cupps, the guard for Indiana, sophomore guard for the Hoosiers, had surgery. And something that I had heard could be coming, but wasn't 100%. And we still don't have a whole lot of details. And so I failed to comment for that reason. But Indiana released a statement yesterday, very short, simple, to the point. It says, quote, Indiana sophomore guard Gabe Cupps underwent a successful surgery to treat a pre-existing nagging injury to his lower body. He will be out indefinitely. And that's really all the details that we have. I've heard what it could be. I've seen several conflicting things. And so I'm not commenting on that because it's not really our business. If they're not going to tell us what it officially is, then there's no reason for us to discuss it. What we will discuss is the impact that this has on Gabe Cupps and on Indiana. First of all, want to wish him the best of luck. Prayers and thoughts to him, and hopefully for a speedy recovery for him in this condition and the surgery that Gabe Cupps went through. And it's no secret, I've had my harsh words for him, but I have nothing against him personally. I don't know him personally. And so we wish him nothing but the best and a speedy recovery on his surgery. What it means for Indiana in terms of the guard position, I think you're okay for now, right? Gabe Cupps was a kid where, he wasn't really in the rotation or the fold early on this season, which I think is probably what led to them saying, okay, let's just go ahead and do this. Because you've got enough guards right now. You've got Miles Rice. You've got Trey Galloway, who are in your starting rotation. You've got Cannon Carlisle and Bryson Tucker coming off the bench. And you're also still trying to work Ja'Kai Newton back into the rotation as well. And so for Indiana, losing Gabe Cupps right now is not the end of the world. But if things start to happen, and knock on wood and hope that it doesn't, right? If other injuries start to come up, then you could be in trouble, because that's what Gabe Cupps was to you, was a depth piece, if nothing else, where you could put him in for a couple of minutes and you did trust him with the basketball in his hands. Was he going to be aggressive and score 8 to 10 points? No. But he also wasn't going to turn the basketball over, and he was going to make the right decisions more times than not. Defensively, may have been a liability, sure, but you could trust him to eat a couple of minutes if you absolutely had to. Or if something bigger happened, like an injury, and he had to step up and play more minutes, then yeah, you trusted him to do that, and you no longer have that. So hopefully none of that comes to fruition. Hopefully none of that is an issue here. We wish Gabe Cupps a speedy recovery. I think Indiana's going to be fine. They prepare to play Nebraska tomorrow on the road on Friday night against the Cornhuskers in Omaha. And so looking forward to that game where Indiana, we're going to be tested, man. Our first test since the since the battle for Atlantis. And look, I'll say it. We need it. We need it desperately, I think, because we need to figure out who we are. We need to figure out if we are ready to go. Lincoln. I said Omaha, and it didn't sound right when I said it. Lincoln. Sorry, I had to look that up. At Lincoln, not Omaha, their Pinnacle Bank Arena. Anyway, we need to see if Indiana is getting better and feeling better about themselves and is ready to play against higher level competition. Nebraska, we'll talk more about this tomorrow, but just to give you an insight here, 6-2 on the year. They beat Creighton, lost to St. Mary's, opposite order, lost to St. Mary's, and then beat Creighton. They also just lost to Michigan State in blowout fashion in their Big Ten opener. So maybe we can kick them while they're down and take advantage of that. We'll talk more about Indiana and Nebraska coming up tomorrow, plus more portal updates. Will Indiana have some news? You just never know. It changes by the minute. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers. Again, be sure that you like the video on YouTube. Comment your thoughts down below on the transfer portal, on the 2025 schedule, and Indiana losing Gabe Cupps. I want to hear from you in the YouTube comments. Be sure you have subscribed to the channel if you have not already, okay? We're back tomorrow to wrap up the week. All right, Hoosier fans, until then, stay safe, and I'll talk to you later.